ReZero Season 3 is back with one of its greatest episodes yet. An emotional climax to this battle-centric arc, a return to ReZero's emotional style of storytelling. Episode 14 gives us an insight into Theresia's heartbreaking backstory and a conclusion to the Astrea family drama that has been set up for the entirety of this arc. It's also the very first time we see Reinhard Van Astrea draw the Dragon Sword Reed, the strongest of the 10 enchanted swords. The Dragon Sword is stated to have been blessed by the Sword God himself. I will make a video covering the 10 enchanted swords and the entirety of ReZero's power system, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video. With that out of the way, let's start discussing this episode. The episode starts out with a question. How surprised would you have been if you learned that I fell in love with you at first sight? We get a glimpse into Theresia and Wilhelm's history as Theresia asks Wilhelm to come over to her before asking him if he likes flowers. Right before we cut to Wilhelm and Theresia's beautiful sword dance. Wilhelm tells Theresia that you might have doubts before picking up a sword, but once you're in battle all those doubts disappear. After a short skirmish, he continues monologuing, telling Theresia about how he hasn't forgotten a single thing about the moment they once parted and how he's come to fulfill his promise. As Wilhelm and Theresia continue their sword dance, Wilhelm moves in to finish off Theresia's reanimated corpse. He charges towards her. Right at the moment of Wilhelm's charge, Heinkel appears. Shocked at the sight of his parents clashing swords, Heinkel yells out words that would change the fate of everyone on this battlefield. Heinkel's words cause Wilhelm's charge to waver, allowing Theresia to slide her long sword into his thigh, incapacitating Wilhelm. Right after incapacitating Wilhelm, the goddess of death moves her sights onto Heinkel. No longer caring to finish off her injured prey, Wilhelm pleads for Theresia to continue fighting him. In the novels, we're told that Wilhelm didn't want to see Theresia turn her sword onto Crucius Subaru, the two the sword demon owed so much. Heinkel, unable to believe that he's facing his mother or that his father would lose a duel, tries to fight back, but he's too consumed by fear to be able to fight back effectively. Wilhelm tells him to flee, but he's too late. Theresia disarms Heinkel, and right as she's about to end his life, someone intervenes. Reinhard Van Astrea intercepts her. Wilhelm cries out to Reinhard, begging him not to take his beloved from him once again. Upon hearing this, Reinhard simply replies, "The dead cannot move, the dead have no future. I will not stand for such absurdities." The statement is pretty integral to Reinhard's characterization during this arc, and it will be something I cover later on. Reinhard accepts that he killed Theresia 15 years ago, right before delivering a single fatal slash to Theresia. As we cut to Theresia's backstory, we see Theresia planting flowers. Right before she has a realization, she received the divine protection of the Sword Saint. Theresia is then forced to cross swords with her older brother. She takes notice of how full of openings he is, right as she easily disarms him, proving that she is indeed the next Sword Saint. Theresia is heartbroken by the realization as she sees herself crushing all of her brother's effort. She questions why she'd become the Sword Saint despite her brother's training so hard with the sword. 2 years later, we hear that the kingdom's greatest civil conflict, the Demi-Human War, has erupted. This is where Theresia's first military campaign would take place. Despite the blessing, Theresia still didn't wish to take to the battlefield. Seeing his afraid sister, her brother tells her that if she doesn't wish to fight, he'll protect her. He continues talking about how he loves being an Astrea and how he loves the sword even if it chose Theresia over him. Once combat started, leading the advance in Theresia's stead, he would fall in combat. Once more, Theresia is put between a rock and a hard place. She's unwilling to enter the fray, but she doesn't wish to lose more of those close to her. Within her head, her uncle's voice would echo, "Pick up your sword, Theresia." We see a flower burn next to the dragon sword, almost as if it's symbolizing Theresia's loss of innocence. We then see the result of Wilhelm and Theresia's duel. With Wilhelm defeating Theresia, he takes on her duties as the strongest swordsman in the land, telling her to become his reason to wield the sword. She asks him the all-important questions again. "Do you like flowers?" To which he responds that he doesn't hate them anymore. "Why do you wield the sword?" "To protect you." Her final question, "Do you love me?" goes unanswered, with Wilhelm only telling her he'll answer it when he feels like it. We then see more glimpses into the couple's life, from their firstborn child to him getting married to their grandson being born, right before we cut to the final conversation between Wilhelm and Theresia. Wilhelm is against Theresia going on the hunt against the white whale. He comments on how Heinkel gave this job to his elderly mother instead of going on the hunt himself. Theresia reminds Wilhelm of his duties to find the missing princess, as she also reminds him about how she's the second strongest swordmaster in Lugonica right after. Right before she asks him to tell her the words she wished to hear disappear the most once they reunite with each other, which is incredibly ironic in my opinion, and it makes their final conversation feel even more tragic. We then switch to the battle against the Hakugi. The CGI for the Hakugi is incredible, by the way. While leading the charge against the White Whale, Theresia senses that the divine protection of the Sword Saint had left her, as the unit she's leading faced annihilation. Theresia senses that Reinhard had received the divine protection right before she comes face to face with the Witch of Vanity, Pandora. In the novels, we're told that normally Theresia would have never attacked such a girl, but in a world filled with the White Whale's fog and death, this girl wasn't just a mystery but a threat. As Theresia charges towards Pandora, she thinks about Reinhard and how she wishes he has more experiences in life than just with the sword as she did. Right after Theresia bisects Pandora, we see Pandora whisper in her ear, "I want to understand you," before Theresia's life is vanquished. As she's on death's door, she thinks about one final thing, her beloved Wilhelm. As Theresia's consciousness returns, she's face to face with Wilhelm once again. She comments on how miserable Wilhelm looks as he begins talking to her. He mentions how he's bad with words and how he made her worry for so long. Theresia finds Wilhelm's words silly. She always knew he loved her. From his eyes, his actions, his voice, his bearing, all of his being told Theresia that he loved her. We get a heartfelt confession from Wilhelm to Theresia right before the last embers of her life burn out. In her final moments, Theresia thinks about how blessed her life is. She thinks about her only regret in life, never asking Wilhelm the all-important question, how surprised would you have been if you learned I fell in love with you at first sight? In the after-credits scene, we see Heinkel ask Reinhard if he's satisfied now. Now that the position of Sword Saint is all in his hands, there is no denying he ended the life of the previous Sword Saint. Reinhard glosses over the accusations, telling Heinkel he doesn't understand what he means. Heinkel continues ranting, saying he'll make sure everyone knows about Reinhard's crimes, and he'll make sure everyone doesn't accept Reinhard as a Sword Saint. Reinhard continues denying Heinkel's accusations and affirms the enemy was a mere corpse soldier, not his grandmother. Heinkel continues to lash out at Reinhard, but Wilhelm stops him. Wilhelm takes Theresia as she's into his jacket right before asking Reinhard if he regrets killing Theresia. Reinhard responds simply, what he did was right and he'll never regret doing that. Wilhelm tells Reinhard that he's right and Wilhelm's wrong before telling Reinhard to go help out in the other battlefields. The episode ends with Heinkel pitifully raging at the absurdity of his situation. Overall, ReZero Season 3 Episode 14 is the emotional highlight of Arc 5, and I think it does its job wonderfully. As an adaptation though, I do have my gripes with it, as there is a huge amount of cut content during this episode, which is something I'll come back to. Theresia's character is of utmost importance to the themes of this arc, and it's no wonder why she would be the focal point of the emotional climax of this arc. Heroism is the main theme of Arc 5 in my opinion, and the burden of being a hero is something extremely present within Theresia's character. We see a pretty interesting parallel between Theresia's brother and Wilhelm. From them we see that Theresia's greatest wish in life was to have someone treat her as Theresia first, Sword Saint second. This could also tie into Reinhard's character arc, as he's primarily viewed as a weapon of the kingdom, not as a person himself. It could be why Felt and Subaru are such integral characters to his arc. Reinhard's lack of empathy during this episode is also something that's rather intriguing. It could be that due to the burden of being the Sword Saint, Reinhard disassociates from reality to not feel a connection to those his power ends, and to not have his duties halted. Reinhard and Theresia's battle ties into that more, as both wielders of the divine protection of the Sword Saint represent an aspect of humanity. Theresia being very human, the kind of person who would never hurt a fly, while Reinhard represents someone who's completely dehumanized, reserved to his duty and no more. It becomes more interesting when we think of primary themes with Theresia and Wilhelm's backstory, and this could tie to their parallels with Subaru and Emilia, as Subaru, much like Theresia, is implied to have fallen in love at first sight. Wilhelm's love of Theresia is something that's very constantly highlighted throughout this episode. We see that through small yet very significant statements, such as Wilhelm continuing to train to be constantly stronger than Theresia to make sure she would never be burdened. It's a telltale sign of his love for her. Pandora's appearance at the same time Theresia lost her divine protection is something that's pretty intriguing as well. Pandora is one of the most mysterious characters in the series, and I love how the author Taipei Nagatsuki is setting her up. Something that's also interesting is how the two times we see Pandora are when two of the great Maw beasts are around. She appeared at the same time as the Black Serpent in Elior Forest, and this last time we see that she appeared with the White Whale. Adaptation-wise, this episode does cut out a very large amount of content, which is something I'm very mixed about. While I do acknowledge that all of the inner monologues and exposition in the novels can't be fully captured in an adaptation, I would have liked to see them get conveyed or adapted through interesting visual direction, something that ReZero Season 3 unfortunately lacks. Highlight of this episode is definitely Wilhelm's voice actor's performance. You could feel the raw emotions in his performance very well, and it's one of my favorite performances this season. I would definitely recommend reading the Theresia Theresia Van Astrea chapter in the novels, as it massively expands on her character, and I do believe the anime does miss out on lots of her nuances, such as her hatred of Rita Astrea for forcing a life of swordsmanship on the Astrea family, and her trauma with the divine protection of the death god. If you want to know more about Wilhelm and Theresia, I definitely recommend reading the Wilhelm trilogy of side story novels, as they massively expand upon his character and his dynamic with Theresia. If you like this video, make sure to comment, like and subscribe. This especially helps with the silly YouTube algorithm. If you like my content, please follow me on Instagram, Twitter and TikTok, as I occasionally post content there. If you like the thumbnails, please follow my friend Schult, as he makes the thumbnails and he makes very cool edits on TikTok. That's all I have to say. Thanks for watching.